our Secretary General is arriving in London, where he will attend a series of events taking place during London Climate Action Week. He will deliver a special address on climate and energy tomorrow morning in London, outlining how renewable energies offers the clearest route to energy security, to affordability, and to resilience, and also underscoring the destructive role played by fossil fuels in the climate crisis and energy crisis we face. Those remarks have been shared with you. And from Ukraine, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us they've received reports from Ukrainian authorities that nearly 40 civilians were killed over the weekend, including one child, and nearly 250 others were injured, including a dozen children. The attacks also damaged homes, critical energy, port, and transportation infrastructure. Frontline regions were particularly affected, including the regions of Zaporizhzhia, Sumy, Kherson, and Donetsk. Attacks on industrial facilities in the region of Poltava also killed and injured more than a dozen civilians, including children, according to authorities. And in the region of Odessa, attacks struck an agricultural enterprise and several civilian vessels, killing a number of people, including an Egyptian national, and injuring two others. That's what authorities are telling us. Attacks on energy infrastructure left parts of 7 regions without electricity, and with the regions of Donetsk and Kherson heavily affected. Nearly 1,400 people were evacuated over the weekend in Donetsk. Humanitarian organizations in support of the UN provided psychological support, emergency shelter materials, and other aid. Despite all of this, during the first quarter of 2026, humanitarian organizations reached some 2.2 million people with at least one form of assistance, including food, water, health care, and shelter support. The largest share of this support was delivered in frontline areas and to people impacted by the strikes. For this assistance to continue, we will need continued and predictable funding. This year, we and our humanitarian partners are calling for a $2.3 billion appeal. And this afternoon at 3 p.m., there will be a briefing in the Security Council on Ukraine, requested by Ukraine. Assistant Secretary General Khaled Kyari from the Department of Political Affairs will brief. Also briefing is expected, he's expected to brief on the continuing and intensification of hostilities and their impact on civilian infrastructure. He will be briefing along Edem Sornu, Director of Crisis Response Division at the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. And turning to Sudan, where reports of escalating violence in and around Obayed, which is, as you know, the state capital of North Kordofan, continued violence is putting civilians at increased risk and disrupting essential services. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that between Thursday and yesterday, drone attacks reportedly targeted multiple locations, including a power substation and a fuel station. According to the local medical group Sudan Doctors Network, the attacks forced the closure of several medical facilities in the city, including a dialysis center. They also reportedly caused the shutdown of water stations, further disrupting access to essential services for the population that is in Obayed. Elsewhere in North Kordofan, local sources reported that yesterday 2 key bridges located south of the city of Ruwaba were targeted by drones along the main road from Ruwaba to Abu Jubeya, connecting North Kordofan to South Kordofan. Despite all of this, our humanitarian partners reported movement along the corridor remained possible as of yesterday. Multiple drone attacks were also reported yesterday in the city of Al-Rahad, located in southeast of Obayed. That's along a key highway. Meanwhile, in nearby West Kordofan, the cholera outbreak continues to worsen due to limited humanitarian access and insecurity, ongoing displacement, and inadequate access to safe drinking water and sanitation. We and our partners have supported the provision of cholera treatments, supplies, and awareness-raising campaigns in addition to establishing cholera treatment in the state. Drone strikes have also been reported in other parts of Sudan in recent days, including in North Darfur and White Nile states, causing civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure. We reiterate once again our call on all parties to uphold their responsibilities under international law and international humanitarian law, which includes the protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure, and to facilitate rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian aid to whomever needs it, wherever they may be. Turning to southern Lebanon, I can tell you that yesterday marked the first day since the resumption of hostilities on March 2nd in Lebanon that peacekeepers from our peacekeeping force in Lebanon did not detect any trajectories or observe any interceptions. UNIFIL says this lack of activities has continued through this morning. We welcome this reduction of hostilities, and we very much hope that this trend continues for the sake of people on the ground. This follows an intense escalation on Friday and Saturday after the latest reported ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. On Saturday, UNIFIL attributed multiple airstrikes and 451 firing incidents to the IDF and 20 trajectories to Hezbollah and 8 projectile interceptions. Over the past 3 days, UNIFIL peacekeepers have, however, continued to observe extensive IDF ground activities throughout the mission's area of responsibilities, including armored maneuvers as well as engineering and logistical activities. Peacekeepers also continue to observe violation of Lebanese airspace by IDF aircrafts, although this has been observed at reduced levels. Yesterday, UNIFIL peacekeepers encountered multiple restrictions of their freedom of movement across the area of operations. In Sector East, an IDF roadblock denied passage to a UNIFIL convoy despite prior deconfliction, and 2 UNIFIL patrols were turned back by the IDF in Sector West. Peacekeepers also encountered a roadblock by the Lebanese armed forces in Sector East, prompting our colleagues to divert to an alternate route. On the humanitarian front, UNIFIL, through its liaison branch in coordination with OCHA, facilitated 8 humanitarian missions in Sector West on June 20th. And on the broader humanitarian front, OCHA tells us that families displaced by months of hostilities are starting to return to southern areas despite widespread destruction, damaged infrastructure, and limited access to basic services. Uncertainty remains high. For many, some families are moving closer to the areas of origin and waiting for conditions to improve before making a final decision on what they should do next. While violence has decreased significantly in recent days, the human toll of the conflict continues to be felt across the country. We continue to call on the protection of civilians, sustain humanitarian access, and conditions that allow displaced families to return home voluntarily, safely, and with dignity. Turning to the occupied Palestinian territory, our OCHA colleagues tell us that in Gaza, civilians continue to be exposed to Israeli airstrikes, naval fire, shelling, and they also continue to be exposed to shooting. All this in residential areas. Our safety and security partners tell us that such incidents occurred over the weekend across all governorates, primarily west of the Yellow Line. We've seen with great concern reports that civilians are among those killed. On access, our partners say Karim Shalom Abu Salam remains the only crossing currently available for aid to enter Gaza. They also report that Israeli checkpoints set up in early June in southern Gaza is no longer causing major delays for convoys reaching the crossing, which is good news. Over the weekend into this morning, we've collected multiple shipments from Karim Shalom, including food, blanket, educational supplies, recreation items for children, hygiene kits, and fuel. We continue to ask for additional crossing points to be open and for items that are being restricted to have those restrictions lifted. Fuel, however, also remains limited. Partners rely on a single Egyptian provider who is not always able to meet the quantities required. In addition, Israeli authorities allow fuel imports, whether from Egypt or Israel, only during limited opening hours of the Karim Shalom Abu Salam crossing. As a result, in the second week of June, humanitarian partners inside Gaza were forced to prioritize fuel allocations to life-saving services and suspend those allocations for less critical services. You'll recall that even when fuel is available, generators often lack lubricant oils needed to operate. There's also difficulty getting Israeli approval for spare parts. And turning to the West Bank, violence also remains at concerning levels. Yesterday, Israeli forces shot and killed a boy and a man who were allegedly within a group burning tires and throwing Molotov cocktails towards a settlement near Hebron. Our humanitarian colleagues recall that in law enforcement contexts across the West Bank, lethal force may only be used as a last resort. Those perpetrating unlawful attacks must be held to account. And back here this morning, there was an open briefing on Syria in the Security Council. Members heard from our friend Claudio Cordone, the Deputy Special Envoy on Syria. He said UN engagements with the Syrian government on the political transition is advancing constructively, though significant work remains. He said that relocating the mission's Geneva-based staff to Damascus would support those efforts. He will return to Damascus next week to continue discussions with Syrian officials on various areas of cooperations. Also briefing was OCHA's Assistant Secretary General ad interim, Indrike Ratwate, said that meetings between the government and UN partners helped to advance the no camps, no tents vision focused on protection, service provision, and sustainable livelihoods in returning refugees. He urged greater international support, noting the $2.92 billion humanitarian appeal is only 20% funded, despite nearing its midpoint. Quick note on Ebola, where UNICEF warns that global confirmed Ebola cases reach 1,000. Nearly 3 million children and adolescents are at risk in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They are at risk from the disease itself and from the breakdown of essential services such as health, education, and protection services. Children make up for 15% of confirmed cases and 25% of the deaths. Children are almost twice as likely to die as adults. Over 130 children have already lost one or both parents in Ituri, which, as you know, is the epicenter and origin of this current outbreak. UNICEF is seeking $70.7 million for its 6 months response, with $20 million still unfunded. UNICEF calls for immediate, safe, and sustained humanitarian access to affected communities so life-saving assistance can reach children and families in need. Our friends at the World Food Program today in Rome had a high-level visit, and that was from Pope Leo XIV, who visited the WFP headquarters just outside of Rome, calling access to food a fundamental human right. He called on the international community to renew its commitment and increase resources to combat hunger and malnutrition. His visit comes at a time of acute strain on the humanitarian system. Global hunger has climbed to unprecedented levels, with an estimated 266 million people across 47 countries facing acute food insecurity last year, yet funding for food assistance has fallen sharply. He stressed that food security is an essential component of global security, raising concerns about barriers to humanitarian action. He also laid a wreath at WFP's memorial wall to honor the 171 WFP staff members who've lost their lives while serving vulnerable communities around the world. And Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, Rosemary DeCarlo, is in Panama today to take part in the 56th regular session of the General Assembly of the Organization of American States. She's doing that on behalf of the Secretary General. She will also participate in the commemoration of the bicentennial of the 1826 Amphictyonic Congress of Panama. Does anyone know what the 1826 Amphictyonic Congress of Panama was? No? Well, I learned with you. It's when delegates met in Panama City to advance dialogue and cooperation among newly independent states of the region to pursue peace, solidarity, and collective action through shared principles. She will pay tribute to those who gathered 2 centuries ago by renewing our commitment to dialogue, cooperation, and the peaceful resolution of conflict. She will also engage with leaders attending the summit. And lastly, at 4:30 this afternoon in Conference Room 6, the first Human Security Awards will be announced by the co-chairs of the Group of Friends of Human Security, the Permanent Mission of Costa Rica, Japan, and Senegal, together with the UN's Human Security Unit. The 2026 Human Security Awards will recognize 6 outstanding UN initiatives that have successfully translated the human security approach in tangible improvements in people's lives across the world. The 6 award-winning programs demonstrate human security in practice, include projects in Ecuador, Ghana, Nepal, the Pacific Islands, Senegal, and Syria. and that will take place in half an hour before the kickoff of the France-Iraq game, in case you were wondering. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Secretary General is going to be in London. Is he planning to meet Keir Starmer? Had he been planning to meet Keir Starmer?
No, he had met the Prime Minister in London in January earlier this year. There is a scheduled meeting with Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, that's supposed to take place tomorrow.
So no meeting as he exits the
No,
Prime
sir. No,
Minister's
ma'am. We
job.
understand it's a rather busy time politically in London today.
Does he have any comment about the departure?
No, I mean, the Secretary General has always found Mr. Starmer to be a very reliable partner, and he's very much appreciated the cooperation he's had with him during his time in office.
One more question on the fighting in El Obeid, which is getting worse. Is the UN or is anybody else trying to bring an end to the fighting and get the parties together?
He is, if you'll recall, Mr. Havisto, who's currently, in fact, in Washington, has made a number of phone calls. He spoke with the head of the RSF on Friday, and various other people are doing what we can to try to prevent what could be a tragic situation. Yes, sir. Et ensuite, madame.
Thank you, Steph. I'll start with a very simple question. Is it ever appropriate for a permanent representative in this building to tell a UN employee, nonetheless a woman, appointed by the Secretary General, you're going to shut up, I'm speaking now?
Look, I saw the video of the heated exchange. I think it's always important to maintain decorum in these meetings. I don't want to revisit what happened. I think it's important to keep the focus on the meeting itself, which is the protection of children and the prevention of sexual violence and conflict. And I can tell you that Ms. Fraser enjoys the full support and confidence of the Secretary General.
And why didn't he put that out in a statement?
Sorry?
Why didn't the Secretary General put that out in a
I
statement?
mean, I think you've asked me, I'm telling you now very clearly.
And last question on that, Steph, is after that incident took place, whatever happened, I'm not going to judge one way or the other in this forum, the permanent representative of Israel posted messages attacking the credibility of Ms. Fraser online. That could lead potentially to hostilities, either online or otherwise, against a UN official appointed by the Secretary General. What can the UN do to protect UN personnel against hatred and or personal attacks online?
I think it is incumbent for those in responsibility who are on social media platforms to use a tone and content that is conducive to real discussions.
Hi, Steph. So Lebanon and Washington announced the creation of a new ceasefire monitoring mechanism in southern Lebanon. Are you aware? Is the UN included in?
Yes,
this
we are aware. As I think everybody's trying to gather some details to what exactly that means, but we always stand ready to support any initiative that would give us that would bring the people of Lebanon and the people of Israel calm and an ability to return to their normal lives.